The sun had barely cracked the horizon when Amara's fingers closed around the crumpled mathematics textbook in the dumpster behind Golden Steps Academy. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pulled it free, ignoring the rotting fruit peels that clung to its cover. This was treasure. This was possibility. This was everything she wasn't supposed to have. Amara, Amara, where are you? Her mother's voice pierced the dawn, high-pitched and frantic. Mama F stumbled between the market stalls, her wrapper hanging loose around her thin frame, her eyes searching for enemies only she could see. They're coming for us again. The shadows, they're coming. Amara shoved the textbook under her worn shirt and ran to her mother, catching her hands before she could hurt herself on the metal scaffolding. Mama, it's okay. It's just morning. The shadows are gone now. See, the sun is here. But Mama F's fingers dug into her daughter's shoulders, and her eyes, once bright with intelligence, now swam with confusion and terror. They took your father. They'll take you too. We have to hide. We have to. SHH, Mama. We're safe. Amara guided her mother back to their makeshift shelter, a corrugated iron sheet propped against the back wall of the market. Inside, she settled Mama F on the thin mat that served as their bed and watched as her mother's breathing slowly steadied, her eyes finally closing in exhausted sleep. Only then did Amara pull out the textbook, her hands trembling. The pages were dog-eared and stained, but the equations were still visible. Algebra. She traced the numbers with her finger, her lips moving silently as she worked through the problems in her head. Outside, the city was waking up. Car horns blared. Vendors shouted. Somewhere, children in crisp uniforms were eating breakfast before school. Amara was 12 years old, and she had never spent a single day inside a classroom. Child, you're up early. Auntie Bissy appeared at the entrance of their shelter, carrying a plastic bag. The food vendor's face was lined with the weariness of someone who had worked every day of her life, but her eyes held kindness. I brought akara and pap. You need to eat. Amara accepted the warm bean cakes gratefully, but she couldn't hide the textbook fast enough. Auntie Bissy's eyebrows rose, and she sat down heavily beside the girl. Still dreaming of school, eh? Auntie Bissy said softly. Amara, you have the mind of 10 scholars, but the world. She trailed off, glancing at Mama F's sleeping form. The world doesn't care about minds like yours when they're wrapped in poverty. They should, Amara whispered fiercely. Knowledge is the only key that can't be stolen. You told me that yourself. Bissy's expression softened, and she reached into her bag again, pulling out a worn notebook and a stubby pencil. Then keep learning, child. Even from the gutter, a seed can rise. But remember, some walls aren't meant to be climbed. As Auntie Bissy left, Amara clutched the notebook like a lifeline. She waited until the morning market noise reached its peak, then slipped out of the shelter and made her way to Golden Steps Academy. The school stood like a fortress of opportunity, its white walls gleaming in the sunlight, its gates firmly closed against people like her. But Amara had discovered a secret. Behind the main building, where the boundary wall met the road, there was a section where the stone had crumbled just enough to create small gaps. If she sat very still beneath the classroom window, she could hear everything. For 2 hours, she listened to Mrs. Adami teach mathematics to primary 6 students. Amara filled the pages of her new notebook with numbers and formulas, her handwriting cramped and desperate. She solved every problem the teacher gave, often faster than the students inside could. The quadratic formula, Mrs. Adami's voice drifted through the window, is essential for solving equations where is squared. Can anyone tell me what it is? Silence followed. Amara's lips moved soundlessly, reciting the formula she had memorized from the textbook. She scribbled it in her notebook, then worked through the example problem the teacher wrote on the board, which she could just glimpse through the window. Come on, class. We've covered this 3 times, Mrs. Adami sighed. Amara finished the problem in 90 seconds and moved on to creating her own variations. If only she could raise her hand. If only she could show them what she knew. But the wall between them was more than stone and mortar. The morning bled into afternoon, and Amara had to return to the market to help Auntie Bissy sell fried plantains. But the equations danced in her mind, a beautiful escape from the harsh reality of her life. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Tunde Balagun was having the worst day of his life, and that was saying something for a boy who had everything money could buy. He'd failed another mathematics test, and his father's disappointment had been colder than any anger could have been. Chief Balagun had simply looked at the paper, marked with red ink and corrections, and said, "Perhaps I was wrong about you." Those 6 words cut deeper than any beating could have. Now Tunde sat outside the academy's back wall, his expensive backpack thrown carelessly on the ground, fighting tears. He was 12 years old, expected to take over his father's empire someday, and he couldn't even solve a simple equation. The private tutors his father hired spoke to him like he was stupid. Maybe he was carrying the negative wrong, a voice said suddenly. In the 3rd step, you should be adding, not subtracting. Tunde's head snapped up. A girl stood a few feet away, thin as a reed, wearing a faded dress that had been patched so many times it was more patches than original fabric. Her eyes, though, were bright and sharp, fixed on the crumpled test paper in his hand. Tunde said stupidly. The girl stepped closer and he noticed her bare feet, the dust caked on her legs, the way she held herself like she was ready to run at any moment. She pointed at his paper without touching it. Question 4. You distributed the negative sign wrong. That's why your whole answer is off. It's actually 16, not -4. Tunde looked at the problem, then at the girl, then back at the problem. She was right. The realization sent a hot flush of embarrassment through him. This street girl who probably couldn't even afford shoes had solved in seconds what he'd struggled with for an hour. "Who are you?" he demanded, his tone harsher than he intended. The girl stepped back and wariness flickered across her face. "Nobody, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "No, wait." Tunde stood up quickly and she flinched. He held up his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you, I just— How did you know that? Do you go to school here?" A bitter smile crossed her face. "No, I listen sometimes." "Through the wall. You listen through the wall." Tunde stared at her, this impossible girl with her impossible claim. "And you just understand it. Mathematics makes sense," she said simply. "It follows rules. The rules don't care who you are or where you sleep. 2 plus 2 is always 4, whether you're in a mansion or a market stall." Something in her voice, a mixture of defiance and longing, made Tunde's chest tight. He'd spent his whole life taking his education for granted, complaining about homework and tests. This girl was learning through cracks in a wall because that was all she could have. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then whispered, "Amara." "I'm Tunde. Can you show me what else I did wrong?" For the next 40 minutes, they sat in the shade of the old mango tree that grew wild against the academy's back wall. Amara explained each concept with a clarity none of Tunde's expensive tutors had ever managed. She used stones to represent variables, drew diagrams in the dust, made mathematics come alive in a way that finally made sense. "Not stupid," Amara said when she'd worked through all his problems. "You just think in pictures, not numbers. Once you can see it, you understand it." Tunde looked at his corrected homework, then at this extraordinary girl. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Fear and hope warred in her expression. "Yes. Then I'll come back, if you'll teach me." Amara's smile transformed her entire face, and Tunde realized she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with fancy clothes or makeup. She was radiant with the joy of simply being asked, of being valued for what she knew rather than dismissed for what she lacked. "I'll be here," she promised. "If you're enjoying Amara's journey, hit that like button and let us know in the comments." For the next 3 weeks, they met every day after school under the mango tree. Tunde brought his homework, his tests, his confusion, and Amara untangled it all with patient brilliance. She taught him using whatever materials they had: leaves for counting, sticks for geometry, shadows for angles. She made him laugh with her clever analogies, comparing algebraic equations to recipes and geometric proofs to market negotiations. In return, Tunde brought her books from his father's library, sandwiches from the academy cafeteria, news from the world beyond the wall. He told her about the teachers, the students, the lessons she could only dream of attending. "Ademi mentioned you today," Tunde said one afternoon, settling into their usual spot. "Well, not you specifically. She said she wished her students had half the discipline and curiosity of whoever keeps solving the extra credit problems she writes on the side of the building." Amara ducked her head, embarrassed. "She leaves them there on purpose, apparently. and they're always solved by the next morning in what she calls the most elegant handwriting she's ever seen. Tunde grinned. You're becoming a legend, Amara, the phantom scholar of Golden Steps Academy. But Amara's smile faded. It's not enough, Tunde. Solving problems in the dark, learning through walls. I want more. I want to sit in a classroom. I want to raise my hand and answer questions. I want to take exams and prove what I can do. But that will never happen. Girls like me, we don't get those chances. You're smarter than anyone in my class, Tunde said fiercely. Smarter than most of the teachers, probably. It's not fair. Amara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tunde, life isn't about fair. It's about luck and money and being born into the right family. You got all three, I got none, that's just how it is. It shouldn't be, Tunde insisted. His hands curled into fists. You deserve to be in that school, you deserve everything. Amara reached out and gently uncurled his fingers. You have a good heart, my friend, but good hearts don't change the world. Money and power do, and people like me will never have either. She was wrong about one thing, though. Their friendship hadn't gone unnoticed. Mr. Okonkwo, the mathematics teacher, had been watching the back wall for weeks, curious about the mysterious problem solver who completed his challenges. One afternoon, he decided to investigate, and what he saw sent him straight to the headmaster's office. There's a street child, he reported, his voice tight with scandal, teaching Chief Balagun's son. They meet behind the wall every day. It's completely inappropriate. The headmaster, a severe woman named Mrs. Okoro, immediately called Tunde's father. Within an hour, Chief Balagun's black Mercedes pulled up to the academy, and the man himself strode through the gates like a gathering storm. Tunde was in the middle of explaining his improved test scores to Amara when his father's voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade. Tunde, get away from that girl immediately. Amara's blood turned to ice. She scrambled to her feet, backing away, her mind already planning escape routes. But Tunde stepped in front of her, his face set with a determination she'd never seen before. No, Tunde said. Chief Balagun stopped in his tracks, shocked by his son's defiance. He was a big man, successful and imposing, used to immediate obedience. What did you say to me? I said no. Tunde's voice shook slightly, but he held his ground. You want to know why my grades improved? Why I finally understand mathematics? It's because of her, Amara. She's the smartest person I've ever met, and she's been teaching me for free out of kindness when she has nothing. She's a street child, Chief Balagun said coldly, though he was now looking at Amara with sharp, assessing eyes. She probably wants money from you. This is inappropriate and ends now. Never asked for anything. Tunde's voice rose. She helped me because I asked her to. She's been teaching me what your expensive tutors couldn't. And you know what else? She does it all while living in a market stall, while taking care of her sick mother, while going hungry most days. She learns by listening through the wall because nobody will give her a chance. Amara wanted to disappear into the earth. Chief Balagun's gaze was now fully on her, and she felt like an insect under a microscope. She tried to make herself small, invisible, anything to end this horrible moment. You, Chief Balagun said, pointing at her. What's your name? Amara, sir. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. And you've been teaching my son, she nodded, unable to speak. Why? The question surprised her. She'd expected accusations, anger, dismissal, not this. She swallowed hard and found her voice. Because he asked, sir. Because mathematics is beautiful and everyone deserves to understand beautiful things. Because. She took a shaky breath. Because teaching him was the closest I'll ever get to being in a real school. Something flickered in Chief Balagun's eyes, something that might have been recognition or remembrance or regret. Show me. He said abruptly, show me what you've taught him. For the next 20 minutes, under the mango tree that had sheltered their unlikely friendship, Amara demonstrated her teaching methods. She explained concepts clearly and patiently, solved problems with elegant efficiency, answered Chief Balagun's increasingly complex questions without hesitation. Tunde watched his father's expression change from skepticism to surprise to something that might have been wonder. When she finished, Chief Balagun was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Where do you live, Amara? In the market, sir, behind Auntie Bissie's stall. Your mother? Amara's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She's not well, sir, in her mind. She hasn't been well since my father died 3 years ago. Chief Balagun nodded slowly as if pieces of a puzzle were falling into place. "Wait here," he said and walked back toward his car, pulling out his phone. Amara looked at Tunde, terrified. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Tunde admitted. "But my father's face. I've never seen him look like that before." Chief Balagun returned 15 minutes later with the headmistress, Mrs. Okoro, in tow. The severe woman looked displeased, but Chief Balagun ignored her expression. "Okoro," he said, his voice carrying the weight of unquestioned authority, "I want this girl tested. Full academic assessment, mathematics, English, science, everything. Tomorrow morning." Headmistress's mouth fell open. "Sir, she's not enrolled." "We can't just—" "Tomorrow morning," Chief Balagun repeated, his tone brooking no argument. "I will pay for the assessment personally. If she scores as well as I suspect she will, we'll discuss next steps." He turned to Amara, and his expression had softened in a way that reminded her painfully of her own father, lost to illness and poverty so many years ago. "You have a gift, child," Chief Balagun said quietly. "And gifts like yours shouldn't be wasted because of circumstances beyond your control. Tomorrow you'll have a chance to prove what you can do. Don't waste it." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay beside her mother in their shelter, staring at the corrugated iron ceiling, hope and terror churning in her stomach in equal measure. What if she failed? What if she froze up? What if this was all some cruel joke? But when dawn came and Mama F had one of her clearer moments, Amara told her what had happened. Mama F's eyes, so often clouded with confusion, suddenly sharpened with lucidity. She took her daughter's face in both hands and said, "Your father would be so proud. I'm so proud. No matter what happens tomorrow, you remember this. You are brilliant, Amara. You are worthy. You are enough." Then the clarity faded, and Mama F was lost again. But Amara held those words close to her heart. The next morning, Auntie Bissy helped Amara wash and gave her a clean dress, old but respectable. When Amara arrived at Golden Steps Academy, she felt like she was walking into a dream. The gates opened for her. Someone led her to a real classroom with real desks and chairs. The test papers were crisp and white, unmarked by dirt or wear. Mrs. Okoro administered the test herself, her expression skeptical. But as the hours passed and she watched Amara work through problem after problem with focused intensity, the skepticism transformed into something else entirely. When Amara finally put down her pencil, Mrs. Okoro collected the papers without a word. Chief Balagun and Tunde waited outside, and the anxiety on Tunde's face mirrored Amara's own feelings. "Well?" Chief Balagun asked the headmistress. Mrs. Okoro looked at Amara, then at Chief Balagun, then back at the test papers in her hands. "I need to grade these properly before making any official statements," she said carefully. "But off my initial review," she paused, and something like awe crept into her voice. "This child is extraordinary. Her mathematics scores alone would place her in the top 1% of students nationally, perhaps internationally." Amara's knees almost gave out. Tunde let out a whoop of joy and hugged her, not caring that his expensive uniform was getting dusty from her dress. Chief Balagun smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Then we have work to do." Loving this story? Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales that touch the heart. The work Chief Balagun mentioned began immediately. First, he arranged for Mama F to be admitted to a private psychiatric hospital, where real doctors could assess her condition and begin proper treatment. Amara was terrified to be separated from her mother, but Chief Balagun was gentle in his explanation. "Your mother needs help you can't give her," he said. "And you need space to grow without carrying burdens too heavy for a child's shoulders. Trust me, Amara. Trust that sometimes accepting help is the bravest thing you can do." Mama F went willingly, and for the first time in years, Amara saw hope in her mother's eyes. Next came Amara's enrollment, not at Golden Steps Academy, but at Bluecrest International School, one of the most prestigious institutions in the country. Chief Balagun's influence opened doors that would have remained forever closed to a street child, but the scholarship he arranged was based purely on merit. "You earned this," he told Amara when he showed her the letter. "Your mind, your determination, your refusal to accept limitations. This is your achievement." But achievement didn't make the transition easy. On her first day at Bluecrest, Amara walked through the manicured grounds feeling like an imposter. The other students wore designer uniforms and carried phones, worth more than everything Amara had ever owned combined. They spoke in polished English, their accents refined by international travel and expensive tutors. Amara's voice still carried the cadence of the market, and her uniform, though new, was the basic version rather than the premium style most students wore. "Who's that?" she heard a girl whisper in the hallway. "She looks like someone's maid." "I heard she's some charity case Chief Balagun is sponsoring," another replied. "Probably can't even read properly." Words stung, but Amara lifted her chin and walked into her first class, advanced mathematics. The teacher, Mr. Ibrahim, was known for his challenging problems and strict grading. He wrote an equation on the board, a complex differential that should have been beyond primary 6 level. "This is what we'll be working toward this term," he announced. "Don't worry if it looks intimidating now. By December, you'll understand every component." Amara stared at the board, and before she could stop herself, her hand rose. Mr. Ibrahim said, surprised, "You have a question already?" "No, sir." "The answer. It's negative 37x squared plus 12x plus the constant of integration." Classroom fell absolutely silent. Mr. Ibrahim's eyes widened, and he slowly worked through the problem on the board. When he reached the same answer, he turned to look at Amara like he was seeing her for the first time. "What's your name, student?" "Amara, sir." "Well, Amara, welcome to Bluecrest. I think you're going to do just fine here." Whispers in the hallway changed after that. Amara wasn't the charity case anymore. She was the girl who could solve university-level mathematics in her head. She was the mysterious prodigy who had appeared from nowhere, challenging every assumption about intelligence and worth and where brilliance could come from. But acceptance at school didn't erase the pain of her past or the uncertainty of her future. At night, staying in the guest house on Chief Balagun's compound, Amara often woke from nightmares about losing everything again. What if Chief Balagun changed his mind? What if her mother never recovered? What if this was all temporary? Tunde, who had also transferred to Bluecrest to be with his friend, found her one evening sitting alone under a small tree in the compound, tears streaming down her face. "Amara, what's wrong?" "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that I'll wake up and this will all have been a dream, that I'll be back in the market with nothing. I'm scared that I don't really belong here, that everyone can see I'm just pretending." Tunde sat beside her, and for a moment he didn't speak. Then he said, "Do you remember the first day we met, when you corrected my test?" Amara nodded. "I was sitting here thinking I was stupid, that I'd never amount to anything, that my father was right to be disappointed in me. And then you appeared and showed me that I just needed to see things differently. You changed my life, Amara. Not because you're from the streets or because you're poor or because you're some charity case. Because you're brilliant and kind and you see the world in ways other people can't." He took her hand. "You belong everywhere, Amara. The world just needed to catch up and realize it." Weeks turned into months, and Amara excelled beyond everyone's expectations, even her own. She won the school's mathematics competition. She represented Bluecrest at the National Science Fair. She wrote essays that made her teachers weep with their insight and poetry. But the most important transformation was happening elsewhere. At the psychiatric hospital, Mama F was responding to treatment. The medications balanced her brain chemistry. The therapy gave her tools to manage her trauma. And slowly, carefully, the woman Amara remembered from early childhood began to emerge from the fog. One Saturday afternoon, Chief Balagun drove Amara to the hospital for her weekly visit. But instead of the usual meeting in the sterile visiting room, a nurse led them to a small garden where Mama F sat on a bench, wearing a clean dress, her hair neatly braided, her eyes clear and focused. "My baby," Mama F said, and her voice was steady. She opened her arms and Amara flew into them, sobbing with relief and joy. Her mother was back, not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to hold her daughter and know who she was holding, enough to smile and mean it. "Look at you," Mama F whispered, touching Amara's school uniform. "So smart in your uniform. I always knew you would be somebody special." "I learned it from you, Mama. You taught me my letters when I was small, remember?" Before I got lost," Mama F finished gently. "But I'm finding my way back, Amara, Thanks to you and this kind man." She looked at Chief Balagun with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for saving my daughter, for seeing her worth when the world only saw a poor girl." Chief Balagun cleared his throat, visibly moved. "She saved herself. I just opened a door. She's the one who walked through it." 9 months after that first meeting under the mango tree, Bluecrest International School held its annual awards ceremony. The auditorium was packed with parents, students, and dignitaries. Amara sat in the front row between Tunde and another friend she'd made, a girl named Kioma who had been the first to speak to her kindly in class. When the headmaster called her name for the Academic Excellence Award, the applause was thunderous. Amara walked to the stage on shaking legs, accepted the crystal trophy, and looked out at the audience. Chief Balagun sat in the front row with his wife, beaming with pride. Beside them, in a wheelchair because she still tired easily, sat Mama F., tears streaming down her face. Auntie Bissy was there too, dressed in her best wrapper, crying openly. The headmaster handed Amara the microphone for her acceptance speech. She had prepared remarks, safe words about gratitude and opportunity. But standing there, looking at the faces of people who had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself, the prepared speech evaporated. "A year ago," Amara said, her voice carrying across the auditorium, "I was learning mathematics by listening through a school wall. I was sleeping in a market stall. I was invisible to the world, just another poor girl who didn't matter. But I mattered to myself. I knew I had a mind, even if I didn't have anything else. And I refused to let circumstances steal that from me." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "This award isn't just mine. It belongs to every child who's been told they can't, who's been judged by their clothes instead of their character, who's been denied opportunity because of their address. It belongs to my mother, who fought her way back from darkness so she could see me shine. It belongs to Auntie Bissy, who showed kindness when she had nothing to give. It belongs to Tunde, who saw a person instead of a street child. And it belongs to Chief Balagun, who chose compassion over prejudice." Amara's voice grew stronger. "But mostly, this award is a reminder that intelligence doesn't care about your bank account. Brilliance doesn't ask for your family name. Potential doesn't require a uniform or a fancy address. We live in a country full of invisible geniuses, children with gifts the world will never see because poverty closes more doors than it opens. If I could be here tonight, imagine how many others could be too if only someone would look, would listen, would care." Auditorium had gone completely silent. Amara held up her trophy, light catching in its facets. "This is beautiful, but it's not my most valuable possession. That would be a worn notebook and a stubby pencil that Auntie Bissy gave me, the tools that let me keep learning when I had nothing else. Remember that when you see a street child or a market girl or anyone society has decided doesn't matter. Remember that they might be holding their future in their hands, waiting for someone to notice." Applause started slowly, then built to a standing ovation that seemed to shake the building. Amara saw Chief Balagun wipe his eyes. She saw her mother's face shining with pride and love and hope. After the ceremony, they all gathered under the old mango tree in Bluecrest's courtyard. The school had transplanted it from behind Golden Steps Academy, a symbolic bridge between Amara's past and her future. Tunde spread out a blanket in the tree's shade, and they sat together. Amara and Tunde and Kioma, Mama F and Chief Balagun and his wife, Auntie Bissy with her market friends, she'd invited to the ceremony. "Amara told me once," Tunde said to the group, "that the mango tree didn't care who we were. It just gave shade. I think about that a lot now, how we could all be more like mango trees. The world would be better," Chief Balagun agreed. His voice was thoughtful. "I've been thinking, actually, about starting a foundation. Scholarships for brilliant children who lack opportunity, street academies, support for families dealing with mental health crises. Things that might have helped Amara years ago that could help thousands of children now." Amara looked at him, her heart swelling. "Really? Really? And I'd like you to be involved when you're older. Your insights, your experiences, they're valuable. You know what these children need because you were one of them." "I still am one of them," Amara said softly. "I'll always be. This uniform and this award don't change where I came from. They just change where I'm going." Mama F reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. She was still fragile, still healing, but present in a way she hadn't been in years. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. "I wish he could see you now. Can, Mama? Wherever he is, he can see. And he knows that we survived. We more than survived. We're going to thrive." As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange and deep purple, Amara leaned against the mango tree and felt something she'd almost forgotten: peace. Not the absence of struggle, not the erasure of her past, but the deep knowledge that she had worth, that she belonged, that her future was as bright and limitless as the evening sky. Tunde nudged her shoulder. "WH.